Grouse Press presents Sonia's Song, written by Sonia Korn-Grimani, read by the author. Verse 1, Chapter 1.
Sonia's Song by Sonia Korn-Grimani. Chapter 1. Mother and Father. I stand 3 feet 6 inches tall when I'm declared an enemy of the German state. I would feel proud of this distinction if I had actually done something to earn it, like sabotaging a train by laying dynamite on the tracks or willfully exposing my neighbors to a dread disease à la Typhoid Mary. But at the age of 7, my options for wreaking havoc are limited. In fact, my family and I have been spending more and more time by ourselves in the shadows. My brother and mother are also labeled German enemies. We don't take this personally, as most people in my parents' wide circle of friends wear the same label, if they're still in Germany, for many have already left. There was no need to label my father as an enemy. He was declared stateless 3 years ago, the first step towards non-existence. The year of that declared unworthiness is 1939. But our story begins long before that. Some would return to pre-Christian times for the telling of it, for the first time that Jews were singled out as a group and blamed for whatever was ailing the prevailing society. I can't speak for all those other victims of persecution, but I can relate my family's personal story. My father, Jacob L. Korn, was born in 1899 in the small town of Lask in the heart of the country near Belchatov. His parents were free-thinking intellectual Jews who proudly traced their Polish roots back for several generations. My grandfather, Shlomo, was an expert weaver. During World War I, he moved to Lodz with his wife and 5 children to seek better opportunities to ply his trade. At that time, Lodz was a thriving textile center known as the Polish Manchester. Shlomo was one of many attracted to Lodz by the promise of a better life, a promise created by a combination of German technical know-how and Jewish entrepreneurial spirit. For even though Polish Jews by law and custom were severely limited in their choice of profession, their craftsmanship was widely respected. Nearly 250,000 Jews teemed the crowded streets of Lodz, and the Korn family was in the mainstream of Jewish life. It was active in the General Jewish Labor Bund, commonly called the Bund. The Bund, in turn, encouraged its members to fully integrate themselves socially and professionally with their Christian countrymen while retaining their free-thinking ideals. Learning was highly respected within the Korn family. But my father and his siblings saw the doors to institutions of higher learning slammed in their faces. Jews were too abundant in Poland not to be kept in their place, just as customs and law prevented Jews from their choice of livelihood. Quotas were instituted to prevent them from attending colleges or universities. My father's family was forced to rely upon their own inner resources to make the best possible life. By 1920, my father moved to Germany, where prospects were more alluring and traditions less constraining. The move also allowed him to avoid service in the Polish army during a border skirmish with the Soviet Union. Father felt no loyalty to a country that denied him what he held most dear, the opportunity for professional education in journalism, his first love. Denied a life writing the news, my father decided to pursue a career in textiles, a field for which he was well prepared. After a few years in Essen and Baden-Baden, he eventually settled into the heart of the North Rhine-Westphalia and established a textile business in Wuppertal, Elberfeld. The city of over 100,000 was an important hub of metal, textile and chemical factories. Much of the city was recent growth of undistinguished modern architecture, which stood in stark contrast to its Baroque town hall and old-town centre dating back to 1161. Perhaps its most unusual feature was the Schwebebahn, a suspension railway running upside down over the Wupper River, into whose narrow valley the city was nestled. By 1929, Barmen and Elberfeld amalgamated with several other small towns to form the city of Wuppertal, officially recognized the following years. 2/3 of its total municipal area was a grain belt comprised of woods, meadows, gardens and fields. From any part of the city, it was a walk of 10 minutes only, or less, to a park or shady woodland path. Because of its setting in wooded hills and its abundance of green space, the city remained pleasant despite its concentration of industries. My father quickly found his niche, and before long this enchanting storyteller was speaking fluent German and had amassed a coterie of friends among the young German intellectuals whom he long admired. My mother, Chava Kupferwasser, came from a very religious background. She was born in 1909 in Zelov, not far from my father's birthplace. Her father Zalma and mother Milka established themselves in the lovely garden city of Pabianic, a textile center about 15 to 20 kilometers from Lodz. Zalma Kupferwasser was the proud head of a very traditional Hasidic household. He was very dignified, handsome, and a pillar of the Pabianic synagogue. And as the well-to-do owner of a textile factory, he was respected by both the Polish and Jewish communities. My mother's youth was lived in relative ease. This included private school for herself and 4 siblings. She was the second youngest, with 2 brothers and sisters. Her younger and older sisters adhered to tradition and married men of their father's choosing. As my mother so often told me later, I had a wonderfully upright, distinguished, scholarly father. If only he had not been so traditional in wanting to marry me off to a much older man, I would never have left Poland. Poland represented the old way, both for Jews and non-Jews. Men were clearly in charge of the household and women were thought to need nothing more than a basic education. At an early age, a young girl knew who her life's partner would be, the prospective spouse having been chosen by her father in keeping with her family's needs and station in life. No sense arguing if she was too young or needed more time to mature. Love or even attraction between the future marriage partners was not a consideration. Fortunately, my mother didn't have to flee in the dead of night. Reluctant to settle down at the age of 15 with the man of her father's choosing, she persuaded her aunt Temma Oratovsky to invite her to come to live with her in Germany, where she could continue her training in accounting, sales, and dressmaking. Her father reluctantly agreeing to this unusual course of events, my mother left the parents in Poland and moved to Wuppertal, Germany in 1924. In 1927, a mutual friend introduced my mother to an unorthodox Polish Jew who had by then been in Germany for several years. My mother was captivated by this brilliant and scholarly man, 10 years her senior, who had established a promising career as a businessman. After a whirlwind courtship, my father sent his father to visit my mother's parents, to ask for her hand in marriage. Grandfather Kupferwasser grudgingly accepted his prospective son-in-law, whom he only met by proxy. And although he lamented my father's lack of religious commitment, he offered his blessings. After a small civil ceremony in Germany, my parents established themselves in a large, well-furnished 2-room apartment. It was on the 2nd floor of a picturesque 4-story stone building at 55 Werner Hannemannstraße, a 10-minute walk from downtown, Wuppertal-Elberfeld. Both of my parents were native speakers of Polish and Yiddish, which eased their transition to learning German. My mother had an innate ear for languages and further accelerated her learning process by attending classes and using German on a daily basis. Life seemed full of promise for the newlyweds, who integrated themselves easily into the local German and Jewish communities. Mother's talent for acting and her beautiful mezzo-soprano voice gained her entree into local theatre productions. Shortly after they had settled into married life, my parents welcomed the arrival of a healthy baby boy. They named him Heinrich, after the 19th century liberal poet and writer Heinrich Heine, whom they both admired. I was born in 1931, 2 years after my brother. In normal times, our family saga would have played out among an intimate circle of family and friends. We would have lived, loved, struggled and fought, but in the end mastered enough of life's lessons to enable us to grow and to thrive. But the 1930s became nightmare years. Henny and I grew up in the shadow of Hitler's outstretched arm, trying not to arouse the fearsome tyrant without understanding why he wanted to destroy us.
You've been listening to the first chapter of Sonia's Song, written by Sonia Korn-Grimani, read by the author. Sonia's Song is published by Grouse Press. More information about her beautiful memoir can be found on the web at claygrouse.com/Sonia's-song.